Calling into session the Radnor Township Zoning Board meeting for Thursday, October 18th, 2012. The first item on the agenda is Appeal 2884. The applicant, 615 Newtown Road Associates, LP, property located at 615 Newtown Road, Villanova, Pennsylvania. Applicant requests a variance from Section 280-15C to allow a minimum front yard setback of 35 feet on the proposed private road in connection with the pending subdivision.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, I'm George Brosman. I'm representing the applicant. With me this evening is Alex Waziloff. He's principal of the general partner of the applicant, which is the equitable owner of the property. I know sometimes, Mr. Ryan, you like to go through the exhibits ahead of time. Would you like to do that?
It might make sense to label the exhibits as you'd like to introduce them. We have your application on the front.
Yeah, we could call that A1.
Okay. And then we have Exhibit A is your agreement of sale. That could be A2.
Well, I was thinking whatever you like, but maybe it could all just be A1 collectively. It's all attached.
We could do A1A, A1B, A1C. Except are your plans part of this as well, or do you have additional plans?
We have additional plans, but there were certain plans and photographs submitted with the application.
Well, I mean, we can, if the board is content to just have A1 and A, B, C, D, and so forth, that's a perfectly valid way to do it. And then additional plans can be A2, or exhibits can be A2, A3. Such.
John, you want to make it the front page of his
thing would be A1.
It would be A1. The second one, which his tab is A, will be AA.
A1A.
A1A?
Yeah.
And the next one's going to be
A1B.
A1B. Then A1C is pictures.
Yep.
A1D is drawing CO drawing CO2-1 is going to be A1D.
Yep.
I think in our packets we've all been given better copies of that, larger copies.
Yeah, we should.
We may want to mark the one we've been given.
Yeah, I'll do that, but it's easier for me to read this because I can go through it. Then drawing CO1-1-2 is A1E, okay? And the last drawing, which is ZS-1, is going to be A1F. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the big drawings as the official drawings for each one of those.
Sure.
Okay.
And why don't I just tell you what I have, and then I can hand them up. I'm going to have A2 will be, our witness is going to be Joe Orsatti. He's a registered landscape architect. And his CV will be A2. I have an aerial photograph, and these are exhibits that will be introduced through Mr. Orsatti. We have an aerial photograph of the property that will be A3. We have some photographs along Newtown Road, which will be A4. We have some photographs located along Route 320 Sproul Road, which will be A5. We have A6, which will be an existing conditions plan, which may be a duplicate of one of the ones that was in that package. We have A7, which will be a zoning setback exhibit. We have A8, which will be a zoning setback section. We have A9, which will be an excerpt from Code Section 280-97, which is relaxed front yard setbacks available under density modification. We'll have information about another development in Radnor Township, which received a variance on similar grounds called the Birches. That'll be A10, and that'll have subparts. A10A will be a zoning board decision in that case. A10B will be an aerial photograph of that development. A10C will be a photograph of a house in that development showing the setback that they have. A11 will be another series of exhibits regarding a development in Radnor Township on the corner of Conestoga Road and Ithan, across from the Agnes Irwin School. And like A10, A11A will have the zoning decision in that case. A11B will be an aerial photograph of that property. And A11C will be some photographs of some houses in that development with reduced setbacks. And we may have some photographs also of the estate house that we're seeking to preserve.
Mr. Brosman, Mr. Chairman, we have a memorandum from the Planning Commission dated October 17.
I was going to kind of wait for him to do his case because Mr. Kachansky has something to say also, so I figured I'd let him go through his appeal, and then I think then we can interject the other information. That way we can do it all at one time. Is that okay with you, Mr. Kachansky?
That's fine.
Good.
So I'm going to be calling Mr. Orsatti as a witness. Just briefly, it seems obvious the board read the application, so I won't belabor my opening comments, but we are in front of the commissioners with a subdivision application for this property. We are seeking a waiver of the minimum roadway width from them. We don't know that we will get it, but so far it has been well received. That will help to reduce impacts on natural features of the site in connection with the road that we are building. We were also recommended by the Planning Commission when we showed them the reduced right-of-way to also seek a reduced front yard setback to further reduce impacts to the natural features, because we can only make the right-of-way width so narrow. There has to be a right-of-way there for a road. So we really feel that we need to couple these two things together. Hopefully we will get the waiver from the board that will give us some relief, and if we could get a variance for the lots on the front yard setback, we think that will give us even greater relief. The hardship in this case, as it was in the other cases that I'll present to you, is that there are natural features on this site that we're seeking to preserve. We're going to be building a road, a private road, through this, basically through the center of the site, so we'll be disturbing that area. So everything we're trying to do is do compact development, keep the area of disturbance close to the area we know we need to disturb. So if we get the waiver from the right-of-way width from the board, that helps us. But then if we couple it with a setback variance, that will even be more. So the waiver from the right-of-way width will tell us where to measure the setback from. Normally it would be 60 feet, so even if we got the reduced waiver, or the reduced right-of-way waiver, we would then still have to measure 60 feet further into the site. What does that mean? That means longer driveways, more impervious coverage. That means the houses all get pushed back further. That means people are going to want to create front yards. People are going to want to create backyards. With pushing the house back 60 feet instead of 35 feet, then there's just, you can see, there's just going to be more disturbance in connection with yards that people will want and maybe accessory facilities that people will want. So that's kind of the gist of our case. I'd like to call Mr. Orsatti as my witness.
Can I ask?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Just as a point, and maybe Mr. Kachansky can clear this up for me in my mind.
Sure.
What happens if you don't get the waiver?
We'll have, and I'll have testimony on this, but we'll have, this is the zoning setback exhibit that I referred to. That'll be Exhibit A7.
Yeah, we have that one, don't we have? That's the
You have
one.
that,
Yeah,
yes.
that's ZS, whichever
Yes.
we called, whatever we called that one. Yeah, we
A1F,
have
I
that. We
think.
have that one. It's just.
So if you don't get the waiver, there's three. This is the property. This is obviously this proposed private cul-de-sac leading in from Newtown Road. It has three colored lines on there. The red line.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Bose, here's where I'm having my problem here, is if you don't get the waiver, then the red line comes into play, correct?
If we don't get the waiver and we don't get any front yard setback relief, the red line comes into play,
Correct.
and we'd even have to tear down, or at least part of the estate house on lot number 7, because the combination of a 60-foot right-of-way and a 60-foot front yard setback is that red line, and that would push into even the estate house and obviously push everything back into the natural
Yeah,
features.
I guess what I want to know is you were Monday night, you were in front of the commissioners for the waiver, correct?
Yes, we have been in front of the commissioners for caucus on, I believe it was October 8th. And at caucus, that's an informal review.
I understand that.
So they indicated that they would support this variance request, we believe, but I don't know, of course, that they will grant the waiver request because it's been favorably
It would seem to me
reviewed.
that your case becomes stronger in front of us with a waiver than without a waiver. So I'm kind of wondering why you would not.
It could actually affect us in a lot of ways. See, what you don't have on this plan, George, is the scenario where you don't get the waiver as to the road width from the commissioners. And then on that, we have to build with this size of front yard or that size back from a full-size street. So that's not on here. So we're at a very floating situation.
Well, it's easy. We could
could be
draw it.
talking about measuring off of this size street or that size street, and we don't even know. How can we give the minimum relief required and put the conditions we want to actually preserve the natural features if we don't know where all this is going to be pegged with regard to a road that could now be shrinking or expanding from
Well,
our
we could-
expectations?
We could draw it on here for you. It's
Yeah,
either.
well, that's
it's
not
be
going to
one
work
of-
for us.
No, but
It's
we-
not going to work for us.
We can't grant relief that way. We can't grant this amorphous relief that's based upon what may happen with them. And
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
ultimately, for if you get the waiver, okay, I personally, and I can only speak for me, I would want to see exactly the placements of the potential houses on the final plan. Whereas if we give you relief or give you what you need to know, I would have to know where those houses sit in relation to the plan. And this isn't it, right? This isn't the plan. This is speculation in three different kinds of scenarios.
Well, this does have houses on the plan.
But
and-
these houses work with the blue line. You're asking us to go along with the yellow line, which means I expect that you're going to move the houses up, shrink the overall scope of the buildings
Right.
to preserve the features around the perimeter. Isn't that what this is all about? Draw it in as close as you can to do less disturbance of steep slopes and green areas. And
That's the purpose of
Repair
it. Now, with any subdivision plan, you don't know the exact house configuration until you come in for a building permit.
Correct, but we can, you can say, I'm not going to put the house any closer or any further away from a specific spot. The exact configuration of the house, correct. You may not know that because each potential owner or buyer of that property may want to have a different type house. But still, what you're asking from us is where is the closest I can encroach on the building line, the right-of-way line, or the ordinance, correct?
My
And-
understanding is if you have the waiver, okay, you're okay with 60 on the buildings in these positions, but you would like to get the waiver and the variance so you could move the buildings even closer. And we don't know what those buildings are going to look like. I mean, there's two ways to do it. One is we'll just pull the control and the board pulls the control and lets you do anything you want within 35 feet of the right-of-way wherever it is. But frankly, I'm much more accustomed to, and certainly with this board, of if you're going to extend into the yard, I'd like to know what the building is and approve that. And if you come up with something later, then you got to come back to the board for it. I
Yeah,
don't-
it's sort of like a chicken and the egg thing. If we had a fully approved, if we had a standalone building lot, it would be
But
easy.
that's not what we're not, we understand all that. And
Right.
we understand that all these houses these aren't going to be spec-type houses, okay? They're going to be custom or semi-custom type houses. We understand that. But still, you're asking for relief from us. And, we don't have all the A, B, Cs, and Ds. We can only go by what we have on right now, and that's a 60-foot wide right-of-way building. I mean, that's kind of what you're asking for. So if we were to give you relief, okay, it's going to be based on a 60-foot right-of-way because you don't have the waiver yet. So we can't give you relief for something you don't have because you may not get it.
I hear what
I-
you're saying.
it's very dependent on facts, and we don't have all the facts determined yet. And for example, where on this plan, George, does it show where we would set this should we decide to give the relief in that way, assuming you don't get the the
Well, my
waiver
view
from the
of it
street
was-
width? Where would that be on this plan?
My view of it was this, and it sounds to me like you're not going to accept it, but my view was this, that we've got, the Board of Commissioners are going to tell us where to measure the front yard setback from. Under the ordinance, that's set by wherever the right-of-way is. Then you have the authority to say, well, once we have the measuring point that's set by the commissioners, how far do you have to go back from that? So my view was that if we get the waiver, we'd be using the yellow line. If we don't get the waiver, then, and we got the setback, we would have a 35-foot setback measured from a 60-foot road right-of-way. It's not really in doubt. We could draw it on here in 1 minute.
Yeah, see, here's what you have to understand, and I know you understand this. It's, as a zoning board, we give the least relief that we can, the minimum amount of relief based on hardship. And we can look at this in two different ways. We can say, okay, we're going to give you a 35-foot building line now. Okay, so we're going to change it. All right, we're going to let you go there. Or we can say, we will allow you to encroach on the 60-foot right-of-way, 20 feet or 15 feet
The
or
side
8
yard,
feet or whatever.
we mean the side yard, 60-foot side yard, front yard requirement.
Front yard
not the
setback.
right-of-way.
All right,
Yeah.
so we have a couple different ways we can approach this thing. It will
Well,
allow
what
you
if
to
I-
move your thing up and give you relief based on front yard setback.
What if I
We're not going to
suggest
move
this?
the
Well, then
front
it
yard.
affects other things too, because the more you move it up, the more of a nice margin around the periphery you're going to create for preservation purposes. But no matter how much we shrink the front yard requirement, that's going to be affected by the street width. So if we say, what if we say we grant you this relief, but you must preserve these areas as they are, not just now, but in the future as a condition of the continuing benefit of the variance? Where do we draw that line if we don't know whether we're working off a 60-foot wide street or a much
What if I
narrower street?
suggest this? I mean, the board has the power to impose conditions. So if we were to obtain relief from you, you could make it conditioned upon us receiving the waiver, which we believe we will receive on Monday night. If we don't receive the waiver, that's at our peril, and any variance you gave us would be invalid.
Or you postpone the next month. Then you'll have waiver in hand, we'll know and you'll have a drawing, because we're going to ask you to have a drawing. Do you have a drawing tonight?
Mr. Brosman, let me ask you one question.
We do have a drawing, because if you accepted my proposal and if you made a condition that we'll grant you the yellow line if you get the waiver. If you don't get the waiver, it's null and void.
Yeah, but we may not grant you the yellow line.
Understood.
We may say you can encroach on the existing front yard setback X amount of feet.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a difference there.
Yeah.
Or maybe based upon specific footprints of houses.
Yeah.
You see, if we change the front yard requirement, that changes everything about the front yard requirement. In other words, the building envelope has now gotten bigger than it would be under the ordinance. But if we say, we're not changing that, but we will allow you to encroach with this building in that front yard based upon this drawing as shown, then we preserve the front yard requirement as to the property generally, but we give you a specific variance to violate it with a specific improvement.
And if somebody else
and that
wants
has a lot of implications.
I think I should take a moment to confer with my client. I would say, Mr. Cutler, that I don't know if we'll be able to come back to you with that type of specifics because, as I was saying, we're at preliminary subdivision plan. Even when we go
Well,
through
eventually you will.
final, so we're going to need to know at a point, or the applicant will need to know from the township, am I getting this relief or not? And then they're going to have to do their grading plan. They won't be able to do it from a timing point of view where they'll be able to come and tell you each exact lot where it will be. If they don't get the variance, they may just have to decide, well, we didn't get the variance.
The way that's usually done, George, if I recall how it used to be when I attended these rodeos, is that they can give you approval to do what they think works in their judgment and make that approval conditioned upon your getting the variance you need from us to make that plan work. And if you don't get that, then you may have to go back to them for a modified approval.
Well,
But
I'm not
their
talking-
approval can be subject to our decision being obtained.
Yeah, the plan we have filed with them does not require this variance. We wanted to put a by right plan together, by right, except we need the road width waiver, but the plan does not show the front yard setback, so.
You see, the other problem you have, I'm just looking at this, there's no dimensions, but in some of these lots, by moving the houses forward, okay, you may have a problem with side yard setbacks. Because like the one lot, I'm not sure, is it lot 3? It looks like it comes from small to large in the back, and by moving the potential structure forward, are you going to be okay in all the side yard problems you might
We
have?
believe we will, but we're not,
Okay,
and we're not asking for relief.
Yeah,
from
see,
that.
that's the problem is, I think we will. And we can't necessarily give you relief on I think so.
Well, you can, because if I'm not asking for variance, that's at my peril.
Yeah.
If they couldn't
But
comply
you'll
with
be
the
back,
side yard.
George. You know you're going to be back. I mean, it's just,
I don't
you know.
think so.
George,
Let me take a few minutes.
In a way-
Take your time.
Could I ask,
I'd
could I ask
rather-
one quick question first? Are you at preliminary plan approval stage right now, or are you at a sketch plan stage?
Preliminary.
Okay, so you would get preliminary approval for a plan subject to conditions, and it would be this plan?
It would be the plan basically with the blue line.
Okay, so this is in other words, it would be essentially looking at A1F. The approximate locations, I share with Mr. Cutler concern with lack of detail, but the approximate locations are kissing the blue line. They wouldn't be going beyond the blue line. That's what you're getting preliminary for?
Yes, we didn't want to show a variance on our plan that we did not have. And we have in your package, and I have on a board, the actual subdivision plan that you could measure these exactly.
Yeah, but the blue line's with the 28-foot waiver.
Correct.
Yeah.
If we don't get the waiver, that plan would have to be denied, and we would have to come in and file a red plan and knock down the estate house. I don't
George,
think
let's
that's
be
going to
optimistic.
happen.
Let's be optimistic for a second. Let's assume that no one is opposing this, and we'll know pretty soon if anyone is. But right now, we don't know of any such opposition. And this thing is pretty much all internal and well shielded, so probably no one is going to oppose it. Let's just assume that for a second. So if you went in and got approval from the committee, it seems to me it would make sense to go into them with the ideal plan, the one they would like the best and the planning commission would like the best, which does the most to preserve the natural features, and be optimistic about having relief from this board, and then you'll get your approval, presumably on some basis, from the commissioners. It'll be conditioned upon then our giving you the variance to make it happen. And then you'll have something ripe for determination. I mean, right now, we don't have really a case in front of us that's ripe for determination.
Well, that's what I'll talk to
because
my
this is
client
so-
about.
Yeah. Mine is
Now,
just
I have one
fine.
point of information before we go off on that tangent. The plan you've put on the table that's on our screens is similar to what we have already had, but different in that it has areas of red hatching. What are those? They're not labeled that I can see.
Well, Mr. Orsatti, we did that while you were in executive session. Mr. Orsatti was going to testify regarding that. That's other areas of trees that will be demolished by this plan if we don't get the relief. So in other words, this plan shows certain grading.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would think that you would want to get everything in order before you come.
You mean like on the western end there? Just because you're going to move it closer to the road, you're going to preserve those trees there on the western end of the property?
Is that lot
Isn't
one?
the house in?
It's lot one.
Isn't lot one house in that
No, it's
hashed area anyway?
not lot 1, it's lot 8. Look at lot 8, the western lower left, yes.
That house?
And you have a hatched area there. That's not going to be any further or closer to the house if you move it up, is it really? I mean, why
No,
would that be affected?
That one probably won't change. What we were trying to show is this is just a rendered plan. You know, there are trees all over this site. Mr. Orsatti can testify. There's heritage trees. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trees. So they're not all represented on here. And you have had other cases that we can talk to you about. And I have case from the Supreme Court where they talked about saving 6 trees. It was a case out of Radnor.
Yeah, I think that the Shade Tree Commission will take care of that. I don't know if that's.
But I
enough
mean,
for-
I hope you don't sense opposition. I
No,
don't
I
think
think-
any of us feels opposition to the general principle
What I'm
of
hearing
what's trying to
is-
be achieved here.
What I'm hearing is you would like us to see if we get the waiver and come back.
Yes, I think that's kind of what we want. Then we know we're talking apples to apples.
And
You know,
that's
then,
what I
then
was-
we can say to you, hey, this is. You can say to us, really, this is what we have in hand. We're going to get the 28-foot waiver. This is what we would like to do. Then we as a board can can kind of say, okay, there is a hardship, because of this, this, and this, that the commissioners think enough of it that they've given a waiver. It makes our job a little bit more easier.
Yeah, and if the commissioners are in a position
more easier is a
to,
good way of saying it, but easier.
and if the commissioners are in a position to support the variance, that's relevant. And also, we have a plan in front of us, presumably, that show where the houses approximately are going to be, and relief can be granted as to the houses, as opposed to just simply giving you sort of a blank check of a front yard and do as you will within that front that
Before
blank
you
check.
talk, maybe Mr. Kachansky would like to say something, which will.
I want to make one more point, though.
Okay.
I, for one, wouldn't object, assuming there's not a legal issue that the solicitor will tell us about. I wouldn't object if the commissioners were to grant you the waiver before they've given you the final approval of the overall plan, and make their granting of the waiver conditioned upon ultimately working out a plan that's acceptable and is approved, but at least agree that that won't be an issue that'll stop the plan.
Yeah, what-
And based upon that, I think then we could act
Yep.
more than we could act now.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need the waiver. I think the waiver is critical to us. At least it's critical to me.
And I don't know why they couldn't do that, subject to the condition of otherwise achieving final approval.
We
At
don't-
least put that issue to bed with them so we can rely on that as a
We-
foundation.
Just so I'm clear, we don't need a condition from them that we get the setback from you. So hopefully, if we were to table, we would come back with our waiver. But as far as the commissioners are concerned, we've showed them a plan that complies. We'd be coming to you to say, now we'd like to do better. We'd like to save more. And if you give us a front yard setback, we can do better, because the right-of-way only does so much, because,
Yeah, but then we know where it is.
I understand what you're
But
saying,
don't we
Mr.
also
Chairman.
need to know if they want to do better, i.e. move the houses forward from where they are? If they get the waiver, they don't need anything from us because they're on their correct side of the blue line, which is the 60-foot front yard with the waiver. If they wish to move the houses forward between the blue line as, somewhere close to the yellow line, which is both waiver from commissioners and a 35-foot front yard from us, don't we need to have some idea of where the houses are going to, how they're going to be shifted forward?
Well, what I was thinking is, we would like the right to put every house up at the 35-foot line. They may not all be built that way. Some may.
But no, what you're looking for is the maximum, the closest distance you can come to the road, to the building line.
Right.
And not encroach on that building line.
Some people
And
may
I think,
say.
I think we can do that.
Well, except don't we want,
You can expect there to be a quid pro quo here. The hardship that is the basis for the whole thing is the desire to preserve these natural features. So if we grant you relief, we're going to want those features preserved to the maximum extent consistent with the relief granted. So
That's kind of your hardship. Is
You
the
can't
fact
just
that
come
we
to
want
us and
preserve
say,
that stuff.
yeah, okay, I have the waiver from them. Now I want the change in front yard or relief from the front yard requirement from you. I can put it here, but I'll try to move them up within these limits. But I'm not necessarily bound to save any natural features.
Right.
Because if you're not going to save natural features, I think we've lost interest in entertaining this case. Because
Well-
I don't see we have any other basis to ask us for the relief.
The issue came up with the Planning Commission on that point, and we actually have, we worked out a compromise with the Planning Commission that was actually tied to the relief, if any, that we get from you. And it basically said that to the extent that we get front yard setback relief from the zoning board, that we would take an equal amount of land and put it in some sort of conservation easement. So if we don't get any relief from you, we don't have an obligation. And I think the commissioners will approve it that way. So they have raised that issue too. I have a draft resolution that has that concept in it, so
Well,
that may address what you're saying.
Noah and the board, should we just let him present his case, so if he comes back next month, we won't, since he's the only thing on the agenda, next month we may have 7 things on the agenda. Let him present.
To the extent that you want to show us about the natural features and where they are and why we're even talking about all this, it's fine if you want to get that on the record and be done with it.
Right, that way,
we're here.
next month it may not be as lucky to have just the one.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things. First of all, that would, if there is a continuance, we'd also have a chance to look at these new exhibits in a way that we're not going to be able to do. But I'm still concerned about, they want, let's take the lot number 6, where most of the house as constructed is actually on the behind the red line, which is the worst case line, and only the little front leg kisses the blue. If you move that house up to the yellow, just forward like that, and had that front northern leg come up to the yellow, just move this house like that, okay? You would end up with still most of the house behind the blue line, but a little bit behind the yellow. Now, it seems to me we want to know where the house is, because if we simply pull the setback controls between blue and yellow, assuming they get the waiver, they could, the initial house would have a small intrusion between blue and yellow, but they would have a lot of ability to vastly extend it and go over the line between blue and yellow. And for this board, would the board want to give them that freedom, or if the board, if they were to want to do that in the future, would we ask the landowner of that lot? Would we want the owner of that lot to have to come back to before this board in order to proceed? Remember, it would be a variance use, not a non-conforming.
Plus, there's another related issue, George, and that is, under our code, within the required front yard, you can't build any structures. And the definition of structure in our code is really about as broad as it can be. On or under the land, anything man-made in an ascertainable location. I mean, it is really broad. Now, do we want to change the yard width so that people could build any structure they want in a place where they couldn't before? Or do we just want to give you the relief to move the houses up for preservation purposes, but still retain that measure of control and restriction on the full ordinance front yard width? See, that's something we have to decide, and we could enable you to do what you want to do either way.
Right.
We may choose to be more specific, and we may be doing our duty better if we are.
Right.
So that's something you have to keep in mind. We can't just necessarily draw the line and say, okay, now you can go up to that line with whatever you want.
Right. I would suggest this, and I think we will take you up on your offer. We will present our case, and then we'll ask for a continuance, see how we make out with the waiver, and come back. But we'll have put most of our evidence in. On all of this, I would view it that, I view it as, if we get the waiver from the commissioners and we get relief from you, what we're asking is for tools from you to preserve more features. If you make it too demanding and ask for too much information for houses that aren't even designed yet, we may be in a position that we lose buyers that we have, and we just have to say it's not worth it. We can't carry it out with the timing that we have. Because we know we have if we get the blue line, we know we can do the development, and we'll just have to wipe out more natural features. So I think it's a delicate balance. I understand what the board is trying to do, but if you make it too difficult, it just may not work out for us with our timing and everything, and we may just have to proceed.
Well, of course, if you design to the blue line and along comes a fellow that wants to buy a house on Lot 8, and you'd like to move that up because you think it's going to be better for the environment and save you some money if you don't have to cut some slopes, you can always come for a variance to move it up on Lot 8.
That's
this
true.
doesn't have to be the end of the story anyway if you decide that's the way you want to go and play it safe.
Right.
It's a very conservative approach if you want to really test the ice before each step. But right now, it's bad enough when your kids come to you and say, Mom says it's okay with her if it's okay with you. Kind of in this case, we're in a three-way one. You've got the Board of Commissioners, you've got the Planning Commission, you have us, I guess you'll have the Shade Tree Commission also, there's number 4. And it's a very complicated game of, well, they said it's okay if it's okay with you. Well, who's at the foundation of the whole thing? Somebody's got to take the first move and make the first commitment. And for this issue, that starts with deciding how wide the street has to be.
Right. Well, we're going to take your advice on that. We'll present our case. We'll ask for a continuance. We'll go before the Board of Commissioners on Monday. Hopefully we'll have the waiver, and the next time we'll see you, we'll be able to report to you that we obtained that waiver.
Okay.
It
Good.
would also be desirable to, at some point, maybe after the Monday meeting, be able to put on the record what the commissioner's position is on, the Board of Commissioners' position is on this case.
Sure, and I think Mr. Kachansky was authorized to do that this evening.
That would.
Yeah, yes, I was going to have him talk when you're done.
Okay. And I know there is, did she leave? She left. There was a-
Someone just left
There
about 2
was
minutes
a
ago.
person from the Conservancy that was here to support us, and I was going to say, maybe she wants to go before she had to leave, but she left. But maybe she'll come back next month.
I think in the sense that we want to conserve the natural resources of the township, in that sense, I guess we're all supporters.
Sure.
That's not the issue. The issue is what can we do and how do we do it and in what order. But,
Sure. Well, we're going to do that, as you suggest, so I would like to call Mr. Orsatti and have him sworn in.
Mr. Orsatti, would you raise your right hand? Raise your left. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And state your name for the record, please.
Joseph Orsatti, O-R-S-A-T-T-I.
Mr. Orsatti, are you a landscape architect?
Yes, I am.
And can you describe your educational and professional background?
Yes, I did my undergraduate work at the Pennsylvania State University in landscape architecture. I did my postgraduate work at the University of Pennsylvania in land planning and landscape architecture. I'm a registered landscape architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I was appointed member by the mayor of Philadelphia as the landscape architectural representative on the Art Commission for 16 years. I'm principal of the firm Orsatti Associates, and we've been in business for approximately 40 years.
And I'm handing out Exhibit A2. Is this a copy of your professional qualification?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to offer Mr. Orsatti as an
I
expert
have one
in
already.
landscape architecture and land planning.
This is what, A2?
Yes.
Any objections?
I know Mr. Orsatti professionally, and I accept him as an expert.
That's all we need to know, no. As long as you're okay.
Thank you very
Peter?
much.
Okay? All right, good. We do.
Thank you. Joe, are you the landscape architect and planner for the applicant in connection with the proposed subdivision of 615 Newtown Road?
Yes, I am.
And did you and your firm develop the initial concept plan for the subdivision upon which the engineered preliminary subdivision plans have been based?
Yes, we did.
And did you spend several months developing the sketch and working with township staff prior to the formal submission of a preliminary plan?
Absolutely.
Are you familiar with the property and the general surrounding area?
Yes, I am.
And I'm going to mark as Exhibit A3 an aerial photograph. Does this identify the subject property with the red lines?
Yes, the property is outlined in red on this plan. North is to the top of the sheet.
A3.
Excuse me, this is very dark on my screen. Is anyone else having problems
Hey,
seeing
he's
this?
going to give you one.
Okay, thank you.
No, keep going. For the record, could you identify the location of this property?
This property is in Radnor Township. It's on Newtown Road on the north side. The south side faces Chandler Road or Drive. The east side is bounded by the Friends Meeting House, Sproul Road, and the west side is abuts a single-family subdivision called Van Leer's Run.
And in fact, Sproul Road, Route 320 actually bisects the property in part?
There's a 1.1 acre portion of the 13.6 acre parcel that is isolated by itself. It's basically floodplain and will not be developed.
Now, you mentioned Newtown Road. We've run on Newtown Road. What is the character of Newtown Road in the vicinity of the property?
Newtown Road is what I call a scenic corridor because of the intense woodland that's on the subject site. It's very characteristic of many of the roads that I grew up in here in Radnor that I experienced, like Roberts Road and Bryn Mawr Avenue. But it has a special character because of the existing vegetation, the lay of the land. It's a unique quality that I think gives Radnor much of its character.
And I'm going to show you a series of photographs along Newtown Road. And I'm marking for the record A4A, A4B, A4C, and A4D. Could you describe these to the board? And then we're handing out copies for the board.
I'm sorry, the first one's A.
For A,
A4A, A4B, A4C, and A4D.
A4A is a photograph that we took directly in front of the site. The site is to the left. You're on Newtown Road. You can clearly see the post and rail fence, the heavy vegetation to the left. You're looking to the west. A4B is a view looking down Newtown Road to the east. Again, you see the landform, the slate mound, the picket fence, and the heavy vegetation. A4C is another visibility photograph of the shot looking east. And so is A4D, which is another shot looking west. But you can clearly see the wooded areas on both sides of the roads, and it clearly shows why it's so important to retain as much of that vegetation on the north side of the site as possible.
Now, although Sproul Road, also known as Route 320, doesn't have quite the same rural character as Newtown Road, is there a large amount of mature vegetation along both of the property frontages along that road?
Yes, it is. And I think the reason there's a slight difference in the vegetation is because there are utility lines on the side of the sprawl that have been pruned up. But basically, it's a wooded corridor and a scenic corridor.
And I'm marking for the record some photographs of those property frontages, A5, A, A5B, and A5C. Could you just take us through these photographs, please?
ASA, what is it?
A5.
A5. I can't read your
writing is
writing.
poor, my
Yes, it is,
handwriting.
Attorney. You didn't get a Radnor High. I did. The first view is looking towards Conestoga Road, standing in front of the site to your left. Again, the heavy wooded area on both sides of the site. You can see the Blue Route overpass at Conestoga Road. The A5B is a shot taken a little further back on the curve of Sproul Road. Again, the site is to your left. You can see the grade difference between the site and Sproul Road. Again, the heavy dense woods. And ACC.
A5.
A5C is again another shot of Sproul Road in the vicinity of the southern end of the site.
And can you explain from a planning and landscape architecture point of view why preserving scenic roadway corridors are desirable or is desirable?
Well, I think that's important anywhere, but I think in particular in Radnor because we have so much of it, and I think it really distinguishes Radnor from other communities. And it's not just the wooded trees itself, it's the picket fence, it's the old gates, it's the old estate houses, it's the stone walls that you see throughout the community. It's that whole area that as you drive the roads, there's a close proximity to your view. It's a very distinguishing characteristic which we cherish.
And I want to talk about some other areas of the property besides the scenic roadways. I've put on the table here Exhibit A6, which is a colored version of an existing condition plan sheet that was in our subdivision package, which I believe was submitted to the board. Referring to this exhibit, could you describe the property?
Yeah, this is a orientation of this. This is a reduction of the plan I showed you, the aerial photograph. But again, Newtown Road is to the north, Chandler Lane is to the south, Sproul Road to the right, east, and the Radnor Friends to the east as well. The orange line that you see is the existing driveway that begins at Radnor-Chester Road and Newtown Road, where it currently comes down into the site and takes a horseshoe curve and runs through the site It's very closely related to the proximity of the buildings to the roads, very tight, which is pretty traditional of old roads and barns and houses in the past years. And this road continues west, this driveway continues west until it exits the site through an easement on 2 residential lots back to a connection on Newtown Road. The interesting thing about this alignment is that this piece of the western property line of the driveway will be abandoned. That road will be removed, or the driveway will be removed from that western easement area and placed entirely on the property of Atterbury Estate. That land will be returned to those 2 houses. Apparently there was an easement at some time in the past. But I think in addition to the driveway, there are 3 structures, existing structures on the property. The estate house itself is a gorgeous property. We have some photographs which we can share with you. There's an existing, what I call caretaker's cottage up to the right towards the east, and there's an existing barn or carriage house to the left. All pretty tightly, the barn and the house are pretty tightly together. The intent is to absolutely save the residents. It's been one of our main goals from the very beginning. The applicants have stressed the importance of that, as well as the cottage. The cottage will be incorporated into one of the lots as an accessory structure, and the existing residence will be retained as a residence, and my understanding, it will be restored in its present condition.
Is that the house on lot 7 shown on this plan?
Yes, sir.
Is that that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So for the record, the blue are the existing structures.
That's correct.
And
There is also a intermittent stream at the southern end of the property called Van Leer's Run. This tributary to the Ithan Creek contains a floodplain, wetlands, and a riparian buffer. Again, it's heavily wooded at the south end of the site. Obviously, it's an area that we've treated very gingerly, and will be retained in its natural condition.
and the red lines there on Exhibit A6, that is the extent of the riparian buffer associated
correct.
with that stream?
Sorry, yes, sir. And again, the site is heavily wooded. The applicant, I should say, engaged a certified arborist to go out and tag every single tree, measure them, determine their health and condition. There are approximately 450 or more existing trees, 6 inches in caliper. There's approximately 30 what we call heritage trees, which are the trees 36 inches and larger in diameter, many of which are in good condition, a lot are in bad condition. But we are attempting at all costs to save as many of these trees as possible, and really one of the reasons we're here tonight.
And are there slopes on the property as well?
Yeah, the site slopes from the north to the south. The change in grade is anywhere from 40 to 50 feet between Newtown Road and Van Leer's Run. There are some areas of steep slopes shown in the shaded area. Obviously, we're staying out of those. There are some man-made slopes along the existing driveway, which at one time I understand was Radnor Chester Road that came through the property. But again, we would attempt to stay out of those steep slopes.
Now, just for the record, you mentioned Van Leer's Run leading into Ithan Creek, and Ithan Creek is shown on this plan?
Correct. That's the 1.1 acre parcel that will remain undeveloped.
Now, just so the board is aware, Mr. Orsatti mentioned some man-made slopes along the existing driveway, the former Radnor Chester Road. There's another piece of man-made slopes that I'm indicating here, and some around the driveway here. We had actually filed a separate application to the zoning hearing board that I'm not sure if it's going to be on next month's agenda or not, but we're going to ask for some relief regarding those man-made slopes. But that has been filed, so you will be hearing from us about that. In addition to the natural features, you did mention the estate house, and of course our plan is seeking to preserve that, correct?
Correct.
I think you touched on this, but does this existing condition plan reveal a historic development pattern for the site?
Yeah, I think it's pretty characteristic of the old roads in the area and how the existing structures were very close to the roads at that time, the horseshoe effect, the cottage being set aside. But what's important to us when we looked at it was the configuration is such that we wanted to design the new road, the new circulation pattern, so it closely followed that road as much as we could. Quite frankly, because of the dangerous intersection of where you enter the site now, we can't use that intersection for obvious reasons, but I think had we been able to, we would have tried to use the driveway in its entirety.
And you mentioned about the structures being close to the driveway, and our plan, of course, is mimicking that, and the relief that we're trying to get is mimicking that by trying to pull the houses closer to the road that we'll be building.
That's correct. And we want to try to mimic it to the point where we take advantage of the areas that have already been developed and are already disturbed.
I'm going to mark this as Exhibit A7.
A6 will need to be, a copy will need to be left with the township.
Yes, we have an extra copy, and we have smaller copies of these as well.
I'm putting whatever he's giving me, I'm putting in the file.
Yeah, well, he's got to give you one of those, because we haven't gotten an A6 yet. I think there's only one copy of A6.
Here's a large A6 that has the same coloring on it.
Yeah, that would.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Roseman, has there been any discussion in the land development proceedings about the regrading of the man-made slopes?
No. We, like the front yard setback, we showed a compliant plan, and then we actually had a site meeting with Kevin and some other folks out there. I was not there, but it was understood to me that it was brought up, and it was noted that since we're taking out most of this old roadbed driveway, what are we going to do with those old slopes? So we were directed to apply for relief from you.
Okay.
And you'll be seeing that application.
Yeah, but I guess if you're, assuming you're going to, this will be continued, it might not be a bad idea to get that component and get some feedback from the Planning Commission and the commissioners so that they understand the whole picture of what's coming to us.
Well, we won't be able to get back to the Planning Commission, but I will certainly mention it to the commissioners on Monday night. As we've already been to the Planning Commission, we got their recommendation of approval on we were there informally in August, and we went back again on October 1st.
Okay.
George, that will be on the
And
Planning Commission.
we do have a memo from them, and that'll be read into the record.
Okay.
That will be on the Planning Commission agenda for their consideration since it's relief relative to a subdivision. So
And
that will be on the November Planning Commission.
so that'll be before we come back on the 15th.
If you're back on the 15th, yes.
Right.
So you
Okay.
can.
So that'll work out. Referring to Exhibit A7, Mr. Orsatti, can you just describe in general terms the proposed subdivision plan?
Just one second. What is the difference between A7 and A1F?
I think the only difference is we added these areas. If you prefer, we can just use the one that you have.
See, the one that I don't have those hatched areas on my copy.
That's what I said. We just did these now. On
Yeah,
this
but I mean,
copy.
that doesn't, what he just handed doesn't have that. This
No.
is exactly A1F.
Yeah, this is A1F.
This is a
This
shrunk.
is the only copy that has that.
All right, so you're going to give me that one as whatever number you're going to make that, right?
If you'd prefer, we could just skip this and use the other. Oh, Alex is pointing out to me that on your copy, the line is actually there as a white line. We just shaded it, but.
We just heavied up the line of the existing vegetation, which is really hard to see. It's white.
But we'll give you this one.
But we'll give you a revised plan.
I'm sorry, I don't see.
And I only want it for the record, you know.
Understood.
If I could take a break.
I'm looking at this, I can see that. It looked, yeah. Could this be, if you go over this as A7, can you prepare copies and get them to me in advance of the hearing so we actually have an A7? Because this is an A1F, okay. And if you could just put one copy in the record, and then prepare another, have this prepared and sent to us, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, they're going to go over and leave one copy with us and then prepare
Yeah,
more
I heard that, yes, okay.
for us.
So referring to Exhibit A7, I guess to go back on the record, A7, Mr. Orsatti, just explain generally the subdivision.
Okay. This, again, is the same orientation, same site plan you've seen along Newtown Road to the north, Van Leer to the south, Sproul Road to the east. The proposal is quite simple. It's an 8-lot subdivision, a by right design under the lot averaging concept. And basically, the lot averaging provides us a little more flexibility than we would get under the standard R1 in the fact that we can reduce some of the sizes of the lots under an acre, but it also provides us the opportunity to reduce the lot width at the building line from, I think, 120 to 90 feet. So those two benefits do help us and have saved us on a couple of items here in saving trees and moving things around. But basically what we're looking for is 7 new lots for 7 new houses and 1 existing resident. We're going to save the cottage. We're going to save the existing house. The barn, unfortunately, we think we're going to have to demolish or maybe relocate it. The concept is, again, to provide a new township-approved cul-de-sac roadway, 24 feet paved, with a cul-de-sac length is about 750 feet in length. And from that simple road, we're going to feed each of the 7 new houses and the 1 existing house. The one nice thing about the road in its present condition, it does provide a little more space in front of the existing residence that we referred to earlier, where the driveway ran right up against the house itself. Again, the dark green areas represent the vegetation. The dark green represents the vegetation consisting of the trees that are on the site. The reason we show the crossed hatch area that you don't have on your drawing, we wanted to more graphically see the amount of vegetation that's going to have to be removed based on the plan that we submitted to the township during the land development process. It wasn't to trick you or to confuse you in any way. It was simply to show you the amount of vegetation that has to come down just the way the plan is proposed and submitted to the township at this point.
So this vegetation would have to come down unless you shift the houses forward.
That's right, and some of it still may need to come down, even if we shift
I
them.
would think in Lot 1, a lot of it's going to come down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you can move.
We're going to have to take down trees and vegetation, even if you give us the relief, even
Yeah.
if we get the waiver. The question is, will you give us the tools to try to minimize it? But, we're going to have to take down trees, that's for sure.
And you'll provide us with a copy of this. I just did a hand-written eyeball, which I'm sure is not
Yeah, we'll get you a duplicate
decent
of this.
copy.
And then just for your information, the steep slopes are a darker green that you see on the plan. And again, we are making every attempt to stay out of those slopes. I will mention one thing, that there was a previous application for a subdivision on this property some years ago, and the disturbance to the steep slopes did pass exactly through the same area where our road shows. So we're not, those disturbances in the roadway area were on the previous application as well. There's been some discussion, a great deal of discussion about providing a walkway along Newtown Road. Again, in that previous application, the applicant agreed to provide a walkway as opposed to a concrete sidewalk. And that walkway would be a surface gravel so that we can meander it amongst the trees and stay out of the steep slopes. Again, the riparian buffer is shown in the light green area. That area is heavily wooded. Again, it's got the riparian buffer, floodplain, and the wetlands in that area. The
So I
white
think-
dashed areas, real briefly, are the proposed stormwater retention areas that we are situating on the property.
So I think you mentioned this, but just for the record, by trying to keep things closer to the paved road that we have to build, does that help to reduce impacts to site features?
Absolutely.
And for the record, how does it do that?
Well, I think you can see that the grading that's shown on this plan, this is the land development plan, you can see the grading, for example, on Lot 1. If we're able to build to that yellow line, That grading will basically be moved forward into the area of the house where it is now. And the other thing is, by moving the houses to the yellow line on the south side, it pulls the houses away from the riparian buffer, affording more room for the stormwater and any outside improvements such as a pool or a patio deck. So we're doing less disturbance. We reduce the amount of road driveway length, which means we're reducing the amount of runoff and our stormwater is reduced. And we're just basically reducing the amount of overall disturbance on the site.
Now, do some of the township standards for development, as applied to this property, given these natural features, work counter to these important objectives?
Yes, they were. I think we've mentioned them.
And what are they?
One is the 60-foot right-of-way assigned to the roadway. And the second one, of course, is the front yard setback that we're here tonight to discuss.
And we talked about this before, but I wasn't under oath, so I'm going to ask you for the record. Does the pending subdivision application seek a modification from the Township Board of Commissioners on the 60 feet wide minimum right-of-way width?
Yes, it does.
And the pending plan does provide the required paving width of 24 feet, is that correct?
That's correct.
So the road will have the appearance of and function as a standard cul-de-sac, even if the right-of-way width waiver is granted, correct?
That's correct.
And has this plan been reviewed by the Radnor Township Planning Commission?
Yes, it has.
And when was that, if you recall?
They were presented on August 7th, 2012, and we had a preliminary subdivision plan on October 1st.
As opposed to a 60-foot right-of-way in there.
Road width is 28 or 24?
The right-of-way is 28, isn't it?
The cartway width, the paved area is 24 feet in full compliance with the township code.
Okay.
The right-of-way width, it'll be a private road, and we're proposing 28 feet instead of 60.
Yeah, so you get 2 feet on either side of the cartway.
Right. Has the Planning Commission recommended approval of the subdivision plan?
Yes.
And now, when we appeared before the Planning Commission in August with an informal sketch plan review, did they recommend that the applicant apply for a variance from the R1 district front yard setback requirement?
Yes, they did.
And we obviously followed that recommendation by filing this request with the board.
That's correct.
And for the record, what is the minimum setback that we're seeking for the proposed plan?
35 feet.
And in October, did the Planning Commission formally vote to forward a recommendation of approval of the front yard setback variance to the zoning board?
Yes, they did.
Now, referring back to Exhibit A7, which is still here, does this exhibit depict the minimum front yard setback relief that is being requested in this application?
Correct.
And please explain the exhibit, the various colored lines, for the record.
We've gone over this briefly before, but basically the red line that you see represents the combination of a 60-foot roadway right-of-way plus a 60-foot front yard setback. And as you can see, that line pushes the houses back even further than where we have them shown on the land development plan. And that will result in a clear case of removal of existing trees as well as further disturbance and additional impervious paving on the site. The blue line is the line, the blue line represents what we have presented to the, during our land planning application. It reflects a 28-foot roadway right-of-way and a 60-foot front yard setback in compliance with the ordinance. And as you can see, even that, especially on the lots 1 through 4, represents a great deal of disturbance in the way of removing trees, and that's why you see the dashed red line that we just brought in tonight. The yellow line, again, is why we're here tonight. It shows it's based on the 28-foot road right-of-way plus a 35-foot front yard setback. And it's critical that we would like you to consider this in a serious manner, because we believe it will result in a substantial number of existing trees to remain, less impervious paving, and just generally less disturbance on the site. We're not looking for any more lots. We're simply asking for some flexibility to move these houses forward, pretty much in concept with the original roadway plan that you saw that exists there now. We're trying to keep this project consolidated in the central portion of the site, using the old driveway, and to try to save as many natural features as possible.
Mr. Brosman, just a couple of things. First of all, when you rerun Exhibit A7, having done it with red ink, you might try to find some other cross-hatching that doesn't, at the northwest corner, it's hard to see where the red setback line is if you do cross-hatching in
That was
red.
the only color we had today.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd redo it. Second, though, more important, if you show what would be disturbed if you can't go before the blue line, it might be helpful to bring an exhibit next time to show how much of these disturbed areas would be left alone if you were able to move the houses forward.
We understand. Don't forget, if you had granted that variance tonight, we would have redone the plan and redo the grading that's been done. We would have to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you would, but it'd just be interesting to see for the board, since preserving natural features is such a part of, as a central part of your case, what
I
can we
gotcha.
save?
I put up here, for the record, it's an illustrative site cross-section exhibit that I've marked as Exhibit A8. Pat Stewart is handing out smaller copies of that. Did your office prepare this plan, Mr. Rosati?
Yes, we did.
Can you describe what this exhibit is meant to show?
This is a typical cross-section looking from the north, from Newtown Road, to the south towards Van Leer's Run. And it shows the combination of a 60-foot road right-of-way and the 60-foot front yard setback based on no variance or waivers. It also shows the area in white, which is really the buildable areas within each site.
So A would relate to the red line on
line.
Exhibit A7?
That's correct. The next exhibit assumes a 28-foot road right-of-way, but still maintaining the 60-foot front yard setback.
And that's Section B?
That's Section B. And again, this gray area that is a combination of setback and front yard setback, right-of-way and front yard setback, gets reduced as you move down our section. But basically, it shows that there's an additional bit of usable land or undisturbed land to both the north side of the site. It's a dotted area of green to both the north and south,
And
where we can preserve existing natural features.
And that B corresponds to the blue line on A7?
That's correct.
And how about Section C?
Section C is, again, while we're here this evening, the gray areas represent a combination of a 28-foot road right-of-way and a 35-foot front yard setback. And the relief that provides us is a substantial amount of additional undisturbed areas that would reflect saving trees, not disturbing slopes, and basically allowing more room between the houses on the south side and the riparian buffer to have more usable land for the homeowners.
May I ask a question about this exhibit? The illustrative site cross-section exhibit. The area you show in white on either side. Sorry, I hit them. It includes where the house is and goes back to the preserved trees, which keeps growing bigger. What's the length of that? What is the depth of that area?
You mean how much is being picked up?
Yeah, I mean the area that's white. The area that's white is the area that you're treating as kind of a building envelope, I guess, for this purpose.
That white area varies, as you understand, from lot to lot. This is a typical section.
But I mean, this is showing that as we get better and better in your priority of scenarios. As we get better and better working our way down the page, we get more and more preserved area on either side.
Correct.
And that's a function of how big the white area is. That's kind of a building envelope area. What is the dimension of that? How did you know to put that line there and not somewhere else?
I think it's actually a function of the gray area, because the white area stays the same. As the gray area gets smaller, the green area gets bigger.
But what is that white area? Is there going to be a set depth beyond which
No,
you will
because-
not disturb the vegetation?
No, because every lot is different. This is a typical section.
Okay.
I do know that the approximate dimension that is saved or reserved for saving trees and natural features will approximately 40 feet between the combination, comparing it to the by right 60-60 compared to granting the waiver. That's substantial.
I mean, would it be possible to establish in each case, for each lot, a line? So you say that if you grant us this relief, we get the reduced street width from the commissioners, we get the reduced front yard requirement from the zoning hearing board or something that gives you similar relief, and then beyond this line, we will not disturb natural features, we will preserve trees. So that we could say, in return for this relief, this is something that will be maintained in perpetuity as a natural area. Now, it's already maintained in the sense of replanted and all that, but that it will not be invaded 5 years from now by some homeowner who wants to build some exotic structure back there.
Yeah, I think
that
our
was
con-
addressed at our meeting. I think, George, you can explain that.
Right, we talked about that with the Planning Commission. They have they recommended that whatever amount of relief we get on the setback, we conserve an area equal to that. We'd be a little reluctant to agree on each lot, exactly a line we won't go beyond, because hopefully we'll sell these lots. Jim and Alex, who are here, are going to live on 2 of the lots, but they've got the other lots to sell, and every person is going to want to decide what they're going to do. So I view this as we're giving them the tools to
But
preserve.
you want to induce us to grant you this relief with the promise of preservation being increased. So how do we define what that quid pro quo is?
Well, I
and how
don't
do we
think it should
preserve
be a quid pro quo. I see it as a tool you're giving us. If you don't give us the relief, we have a by right plan, if we get the waivers, that we can do you'll force us to knock down more trees. If you make it too restrictive, we're afraid we'll lose buyers.
Yeah, but that's the kind of argument that works when you're looking for plan approval. This is a quasi-judicial body that has, a mandate to not grant variances from the zoning code except to alleviate non-self-caused hardship and to grant only the minimum relief required. If the preservation of these natural features qualifies as a hardship, and you're saying it does, and maybe it does, then to alleviate that, we are giving this relief to alleviate that hardship, which means to preserve more natural features. That's the relief we're giving. Not to give you a smaller road to build or a smaller area within which you can't build on the lot, but to preserve the features, to alleviate the hardship. The hardship is the features. So you have to be able to tell us what area within which you will not disturb the features.
If we're granting the waiver, the 35 feet, what's to protect the features behind the houses from being protected, from being demolished later by swimming pools or tennis courts or whatever?
Well, there are zoning requirements that have to be met, and we're just leery of putting too many restrictions on it that we won't be able to sell the lot. So
I'm sympathetic.
if you gave us
That's,
the
that's
variance,
not our concern.
I
But
know,
remember,
but-
we have to
concern is-
alleviate the hardship, George. The hardship
You
is
are.
we don't want to destroy these trees. We don't want to destroy these slopes more than we have to.
you are by giving them the tools not to.
It doesn't mean they'll use the tools.
I know, but if you don't give the relief or you put such onerous conditions on that they'll get the relief and abandon it, the more trees will be demolished. So you
But
are relieving
we
the
don't
hardship.
know that. Without protections, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
We could grant the relief and the trees get demolished anyway.
That's right.
But that
And then
was
we haven't
very-
solved the hardship.
that
We
would
haven't
be less-
preserved the trees in the
That would
slope.
be very less likely. If you don't grant the relief, they will be, and more will be.
You're asking us to give you the opportunity to do a good thing and alleviate a hardship that would be a hardship on the community, on the residents of this development, and on the landowners and this purchaser. But it's all in terms of the hardship being the preservation of the resources. While you're coming here very reasonably and saying, why make us do more harm to the natural environment than we have to?
Right.
You work with us and we'll save it. We're saying, fine. How do we make sure we save it since that's the hardship? And you're saying, but we really can't tell you what we'll do and we won't commit because that may tie our hands.
Well,
then
I'm
we
saying-
can't alleviate the hardship then. We can't protect those trees and
Well, what I'm
slopes.
saying is what we believe we have agreed with the Planning Commission and discussed with the commissioners in caucus, and we believe it'll be approved this way Monday, that if we get a setback relief from the zoning board, the difference between 60 and 35 feet, if you were to grant that we will add up the amount of space, the relief you're giving us, and we will put into a conservation easement that amount of space. Now, that is, I guess, a quid pro quo. It sounds like you're asking for a lot more than that you're saying, well, if we give you this front yard setback, you haven't seen a plan of that, so maybe you're not asking for more of that. We're prepared to give that, but we don't want to give more than we're getting either. What we have to remember is some of the other precedents I was going to get to were density modification developments. Density modification, as we'll testify for the record, allows for 35-foot setbacks. But what it also allows for is density modification. There are tools in that ordinance where you can say, we're going to put more houses on the lot than we could have. We're not saying that here. We have another plan. We have basically the plan that is the red line plan that we have reviewed with Mr. Kachansky, and we believe that we could do the red line plan and still get 8 lots. So we're not asking for any more than we could do under the zoning. We're just asking for the tools. So, yes,
There's a benefit for both sides here.
Right, we would be
Because it's going to be
comfortable.
cheaper to do this with a narrower road and a smaller setback. There'll be less trees to fell. There'll be less grading to do. There'll be a smaller road to build. I mean, there are benefits for everybody, and that's the best kind of outcome there is, where everybody gets something.
Well, if you could
But we
accept-
have to get what we need to alleviate the hardship, or we have no authority to act to grant relief. We only can grant relief to alleviate hardship, and the hardship is the unnecessary destruction of the natural resources.
Well,
You're
the
going to have to
cases
find
I
some way
have-
of giving that to
The
us.
cases I have that I've cited in my application, the Crawford case, a Supreme Court case from Pennsylvania, out of Radnor Township, and the Holmes case, they granted relief based on preserving natural features, and there was no condition that they couldn't go and cut them down. The 2 precedents that I'm going to go over with Mr. Orsatti, which were variances granted from the minimum tract size for density modification for the birches, and the one across from Agnes Irwin, the decisions in those cases were based on natural features, but there was no condition that said, oh, you have a line, you can't go beyond. So
Is there a density modification provision applicable to this district and this size lot?
in this district, it is, not this size lot.
No, so
But in
that's
those
not
cases,
really relevant, is it?
Well,
Yeah.
it is relevant, I think, because in those cases, a variance was granted to apply density modification from the minimum tract size, and the basis of that was because of the natural features, the trees. And one of the tools they used under density modification was a 35-foot setback, even measured from the curb line, not even from the right-of-way line. You know, the Crawford zoning case says, in part, whatever the loss of landscape beauty may be occasioned by the fact that the garage now in existence will, when converted into a residence, have a side yard which is 2.2 feet narrower than the standard for that vicinity, and the backyard will be in length 66% smaller than the standard, will be compensated by the fact that at least 6 beautiful trees will be saved if the appellant is not required to move his garage in 2 directions. The distance is indicated. Shade trees add great value, aesthetic value to any residential district, and any zoning board which has due regard for the beauty of the residential area will hesitate to demand an act which will require destruction of beautiful trees in order to obtain conformity with the strict letter of the zoning regulation.
In that case, though, after they granted the approval and they built the garage in accordance with that, did the guy knock down the trees?
I don't know, it was from
No, but
1946.
we-
1946.
That's just lovely, but we want to make sure that those trees
Right.
are in fact preserved.
The other-
That's the
But
basis
as a
for
matter
granting
of
the
law,
ordinance.
I'm just saying that.
But
the
we're not going to
Supreme
resolve
Court-
this tonight. We're letting you put on your case, and
Sure.
we're going to go where we're going to go with this.
May I observe
But
one-
I'm just making a strong suggestion to you that you think about how you're going to show us that we will, in fact, alleviate the hardship as to these resources in molding this relief. Otherwise, maybe we're not the place you should be to get the kind of relief you want. But I think you need to think about that. If that's a hardship, and if we agree with you that that's the hardship, you have any other hardship you've alleged? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, as I said, we have reviewed that with the Planning Commission.
No, but
And-
they do not have jurisdiction in this matter, George.
I
understand
understand.
you're working in good faith with everybody.
Well, what I'm trying to say, Mr. Cutler, is that there will be a condition, I believe, I have a draft resolution of our preliminary subdivision plan that basically requires that to the extent that we get relief from this zoning board for the front yard setback, we will add up the area of the setback relief, and we will put a conservation easement on that amount of land. On top of that, we've agreed to also put the riparian buffer, which exceeds the amount by a lot of the setback relief, also put a conservation easement on that. So that's what we believe we will be approved by the commissioners.
So if you have that agreement entered into, then you can offer that to us
Right.
as the protection and the solving of the hardship, right?
Yeah, and we'll
So when will you have that, so we can consider that as part of our decision?
hopefully that'll come Monday, and that'll be another advantage of the continuance that you
Right.
suggested.
And again, I think you can understand, as well as your clients can understand, is that what you're, as Mr. Keller said, what you're basing your hardship on is the preservation of the resources. And all we're saying is, yeah, well, we kind of agree with you that is a hardship here, and we in fact do want to maintain the resources there. We just want some kind of some semblance of an assurance that, that they are going to be preserved, that not when you walk out of here that somebody's going to cut the trees down. Sure. And that's a real possibility. And
Yeah.
we just want to kind of have some kind of assurance from the builders that that's going to happen. Now,
On the Crawford
Is-
case, by
is
the
it-
way, just to interrupt, the Crawford case affirmed a zoning board grant of relief. It did not overturn a zoning board denial, did it?
I think it did,
The zoning board denied the
twice.
the relief?
Twice. And they went back and reapplied. It was denied, and it was over. I think the Delaware County Court affirmed the zoning board, and the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania reversed.
Okay.
What was the date of that case?
It was in Radnor Township, 1948. Still good law.
I don't think we're on the board then, no.
I shepherdized it.
No, I don't think it's the same code. I don't think there was a steep slope ordinance that. I mean, I think there are other issues besides trees here. I have visions of some future owner deciding to cut a terrace into his backyard, cut down trees, change the grading, and put a tennis court in 5 years from now. And then we've granted the relief for what purpose? How have we solved the hardship?
Yeah, I'm hoping that what happens on Monday will shed some light on that.
And I think that'll make our job and your job a lot easier.
Understood. I'm about to wrap up. I have a few things to go through with Mr. Orsatti, if I could continue. Joe, is the reduced minimum front yard setback of 35 feet in keeping with other developments in Radnor Township that were designed to reduce impacts to natural features over that which would have been found with conventional development?
Yes.
And did at least two of these developments receive variances from the zoning board to apply density modification provisions of the zoning ordinance to the
That's correct.
property? And does density modification include a reduced front yard setback of 35 feet from the edge of the curb?
Yes, they did.
And what are the developments that we're talking about? This is Birch's.
Yes.
I'm going to label this A10.
Are you submitting the copies of the decisions in these cases?
Yes, if that would be helpful. I have them.
Yes, absolutely.
A10A,
This is which, I'm sorry, which one is this again?
So a different subject. Is this really helpful to put this in the record?
He can put it in. I mean, I'll tell you this much, that it is clear that whatever is done for one property is not precedent for another property. That's Pennsylvania law. And
Plus,
again, we haven't got
It was done by density modification, which is not, and they haven't asked for the relief of being allowed to use density modification.
No, but there's,
So it's
they're
totally-
offering it as a policy, as a policy matter in the township. This has been done. I share your, what I sense is you're wondering how relevant can this be? Because one, each property is its own case and own facts, and we're not hearing the cases in each of these circumstances. We're just getting decisions. And secondly, density modification doesn't apply on this property because the lot's too small.
And we haven't been asked to grant a variance to allow it to apply. So it really seems to be totally beyond the scope of this case.
Well, if I could tell
If you want to
why-
put it in, George, it's just more paper.
I would like to, and where I'm going with it is,
I'm sorry, which was the, what is this exhibit number?
A10A. Where I'm going with this is, and you'll see in both of the decisions, I'm putting these in to show that physical features can form the basis of a hardship. And these two developments, variances were granted to allow density modification to be used. The variance was granted from the minimum tract size. But once density modification applied, they employed the 35-foot front setback that we are. So in a sense, they did the same thing with the setbacks, even lesser setback because they measure from the curb. But the basis of the hardship was the preserving of the natural features. So that's what I think is similar.
But that was after the density modification.
They got approval to put a density modification on an undersized tract. That was what the variance was?
Yes.
Which actually may be a lesser variance, a more greater variance than just simply the setback, because that allows all the density.
We
But
thought
again,
it
it's a
wa-
different case. It's a different
Yeah,
case.
we thought it
It's
was
not
a
this
greater
property.
variance, which is why we did not request it. We went under the lot averaging, kind of by right under that, and thought they're both dimensional variances, but a setback variance seems certainly of a lesser moment than the tract size variance. So we'll run quickly through this. Just for the record, A10A, is that the Birches?
Yes, it is.
Where is that located?
It's located off of Bryn Mawr Avenue, just down from the Bryn Mawr Hospital as you head west. It's a it's a 10-acre project, award-winning project containing 11 lots.
And does this aerial show reduced front yard setbacks?
Yes, it does.
And do you have the photos, Pat? The photo? A10B is going to be just a photograph of one of the homes in the Birches.
Correct.
A10B. Are these going to be A10B1 or?
A10A, A10B, and A10C will be the decision. A10 is all about the Birches.
Well, these are photos of the Birches, right?
Yes.
And they, you see there are a lot of them. I assume you want to go and,
Oh, I didn't, yes.
so this would,
A1 or A10B1. I thought there was only one. I apologize.
yeah, I'm using little Roman numerals. A10, little b, Roman numeral 2. That's the decision. That's A10C.
Correct.
Now, what are we doing, these A10?
A10B, then Roman numeral 1, A10B, Roman numeral 2, and so
Okay.
on.
I heard somebody say A10BC or something. I'm thinking,
A, B, C, D.
So just run through these quickly.
These are typical examples of how the 35-foot setback appears in true form. These are sizable houses, but you don't feel that there's anything crowded here. If you see in Roman numeral number 1, Roman numeral number 2 shows the distance between the houses across the main road. And again, more photographs, basically of the houses showing how the aesthetics of the setback really looks.
And now,
But it's clearly clearly recognize that if you look at the overall site plan of the project, the reason for that 35-foot setback is the preservation of a stream valley and existing trees and less disturbance to the rear of these homes. They were able to be pulled away from those existing woods, and you can see the large group of trees, which is precisely what we're asking for, precisely.
And just when you're talking about the photos, as I mentioned, the density modification allows the front yard setback to be measured from the curb. So this will be closer than what we're asking for because we're still going to measure from the right-of-way.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay, let's go to, and for the record, I handed in A10C, which was a copy of the decision, to Mr. Ryan.
1986 zoning board of decision.
And let's move quickly to the, I don't know if this development has a name. It's located across from Agnes Irwin School on the corner of Conestoga Road and Ithan. It's the former Mosino tract. It was known years ago. And similarly, we'll have A11A will be the aerial photo. A11B will be a series of photographs, and we'll label them with Roman numerals. And A11C will be the zoning decision.
So what is this one?
This is A11. That'll be A11B, the aerial, or A11A, the aerial photo.
And this one is A11C, and then you're going to give us some photos in between?
Yes. I think
Did
Pat's
you
handing them
give
out.
me the decision from the first Birches? Okay, now what did you mark this one? Oh, A10C? Okay.
Correct.
I didn't get that. So that's for the
Sorry.
record.
Here's the decision for the other one, A11C.
Okay. So what are these? It's just these pictures, or what are we calling these? A11?
A11B, Roman numeral 1, 2, and so on. Are you caught up to us? Joe, referring to Exhibit A, 11A, is this the aerial photograph of the subdivision on the corner of Conestoga Road and Ithan?
Yes, it is.
And describe that as you did with the Birches.
Again, this is South
Ithan.
Ithan Avenue and Conestoga Road, the former Mazzino residence. It's 11.5 acres. It contains 18 lots. Again, it's a density modification example.
And it shows smaller front yard setbacks.
Yes, you can see the 35-foot setback along each of the roads. And what that afforded them to do is to preserve the existing trees along the perimeter of the property. And most importantly, it allowed them to save a large block of trees along the corner of Ithan and Conestoga Road.
And can you just run through the photos very quickly?
Again, the photographs indicate, I'm not calling out each one, but they're basically all the same. They just show an idea of how this 35-foot setback, front yard setback appears. It doesn't look crowded. They're large homes, very handsome homes.
And again, those are measured from the curb, so ours would have a little more spacious feel since we'd measure from the
That's correct.
right-of-way.
And you see in one of the photographs, you even have a turnaround in one of the front houses. I don't know what number that is, but
And I think we've said this a number of times, but for the record, if the variance was granted, would granting the variance allow the development to be intensified by creating any more lots than would have otherwise been allowed?
Absolutely not.
And in your opinion, will there be any detrimental impact to the public health, safety, and welfare or any neighboring properties as a result of any variance relief that would be granted here?
No, it's actually an improvement for the residents, for both on and off the site.
That's all I have at this time. I guess since we're continuing, or maybe I should move the exhibits so I don't forget.
Why don't you move these in, and if you have more exhibits,
Right.
Okay.
You are going to redo A7?
We will get you a revised A7.
Okay, I'm going to read into the record what we, is a note that we had gotten, a memorandum we had received from the Planning Commission, and says, it's in reference 2012 S15 preliminary of the 615 Newtown Road Association's LP to subdivide existing 13.6 acre parcel into 8 residential lots and retaining existing residents at 615 Newtown Road, Villanova. Submitted August 31st, 2012. The applicant is requesting relief from the zoning section 280-15C to reduce the front yard setback from the required 60 feet to 35 feet to avoid unnecessary disturbances to natural resources that exist on the site. It was moved and seconded that the Planning Commission endorses the variance request for the reduction of the front yard setback, with the preference being the 35-foot setback, and would agree to whatever variances the zoning hearing board would approve. We want to call that any number or just?
I make this T1.
T1, okay. Also, Kevin, you have something you want to say from the commissioners?
Correct. At the October...
Actually, you should probably be sworn, shouldn't you?
Yes.
Yes, you need to be sworn.
Kevin Kochansky. At the October 8th Board of Commissioners meeting, the commissioners voted to authorize me to come to this meeting tonight to express their support of the conservation principles proposed by the applicant and the township's interest in furthering those principles as a result of the applicant's request for the variance.
So the commissioners would support the actual variance, which would, if granted in the form requested, they understand that would sort of subsume the whole issue of the waiver because they would get the variance.
Correct, which is why they authorized me to come tonight to
And they would
express
also,
their support of that.
Did they give any thought about the waiver? Any of their thoughts on the waiver at the time?
In general, at the caucus meeting, there was general support for that. Ultimately, that is something that will play out at Monday night's meeting when this applicant is up for a formal vote.
But they're in favor of the variance.
Yes.
You said in principle, but they didn't, right?
The conservation principles that will be put forth as a result of the preservation of the additional natural resources.
Okay.
I mean, one possibility, I don't know, and it's not something we can consider tonight, but to grant the, if the board believed that the hardship was there and wanted to grant a variance, to grant relief conditioned upon a conservation easement satisfactory to the commissioners in the subdivision and land development stage. How would you view that, Mr. Brosman? How would that?
I think that would be acceptable. I think that's a good way to handle it.
I'm not endorsing it. I'm just tossing that out.
You're just throwing it out there, right?
Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
I guess with that, I would like to request that we continue this application until, I believe it would be November 15th, your next...
The next scheduled
scheduled
zoning
meeting.
Okay, that's the better way of saying it, in case something happens in between there.
Okay.
Okay?
And you would give us an extension of time for that hearing, and then also an additional extension of 45 days to run from the closure of the hearings?
Sure. You probably don't need it, but I'll give it to you if you I think you have it anyway.
And implicitly, because you've asked for the continuance. But
right, but I'll give you whatever you request.
Oh, I can have 2 years to write the decision. No, I'm not.
Well, those same
Is that
times.
okay with everyone? Okay. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further business in front of the board. The meeting is adjourned.